What's up, Starcraft fans? Today we're doing the tier list for Get Out More on Dan's Game of Night. Brian, let's hear the mutation.
Dead of Night is the map where we have to destroy 151 infested structures to clean out the infestation. This would be easy were it not for the fact that the infested structures all spawn enemies at night and attack our base alongside several special infested. Amon steals your buildings if he destroys them. He also covers your minerals. His guys also explode when they die.
Alright, so we have Joni and Pidgeot in the call with us today. How are you guys?
Good. How are you?
Evil. I'm evil. So, Joni, how do we rank the commanders this week?
Right, so we've got sort of three mutations, and there's some interesting stuff with them. So I think from my point of view, it is pretty simple. Like if a commander is resistant to 1, 2, or 3 mutations, they'll get ranked higher or lower, dependent. Self-destruction, specifically plays out of favor of like army commanders, melee commanders. So they're going to suffer as a result of that one. Eminent Domain makes this is quite a static, or can be played with a lot of static defense. This map, so Eminent Domain is going to have an impact on that. And then mineral shields, any commander that can survive on a pretty low budget is going to get ranked higher as well.
What do you think, Pidgeot?
Yeah, the one thing I'll add to that with this is that Eminent Domain does impact a lot of our commanders a little more than some of the other mutations. Some in more fun ways, some just makes commanders that are usually strong just struggle a little bit more, and vice versa. So it's quite a fun one to have. But I think the combination of the three on this map, usually mineral shields you can ignore, but when we're thinking of Eminent Domain and repairing structures, for example, it might have a interaction that impacts how they do. So it'll definitely be a fun one this week.
All right, so let's begin. Abathur, where do we have him?
So Abathur's typically not a traditionally very building heavy commander, certainly not one that relies particularly heavily on static. And actually he's got a really good alternative to static, which is swarm hosts, which he can use both for defense and clearing. So for my money on this one, if you're leaning heavily into swarm hosts, yes, the locusts are going to be impacted by self-destruction, but at the same time they're also free, so that's a good thing. I think there's probably an argument to be made for playing P1 here, and just really ramping up your swarm hosts. Sort of into turbo. I had Abathur ranked between S and A.
Okay, what do you think, Pidgeot?
Yeah, I think Abathur definitely has the tools for this one. He has his toxicness to help defend without kind of the worry of the structures, which is always a nice plus. But the plus side of, on top of that, as you mentioned, is he does have swarm hosts. The only reason I couldn't get myself to put him in S is just the speed. With this one, the longer the game goes, the more challenging it will get. So with Abathur, it takes a little bit of a run-up time, especially to build up those swarm hosts. So what I like to do with him is, I'll use the swarm host for offense and defense, but since the self-destruction will just slow down my pushing power, it does just limit his speed, and I think that is going to be important for those characters that go S tier in this combination. So for me, I have him in A.
Okay, so both of you have Abathur in A. Let's put Abathur in A. Prestige-wise, do you want the you said first one?
Yeah, I think ultimate evolutions are going to be affected by self-destruction. And yes, they're pretty chonky, but at the same time, why would you go there when you don't have to? I still think it's probably very viable. There's loads of useful things like deep tunnel from P2, but I'd be inclined to go super swarm hosts and play P1.
Yeah, personally, I might advocate a bit for P2 just because the locusts will have extra range, and that might just help avoid some of those explosions. So it just might make it a little easier to push. Definitely, I feel like both prestiges work in this case, but I lean a little bit more towards Tumbling Horner.
Yeah. All right. I guess just choose your playstyle. Let's move on. Alarak, where do we have him?
So for Alarak, I think he does have a bit more trouble with this combination. His units are a bit more expensive. However, with mineral shields, and this applies to a lot of commanders, you can just put like a a photon cannon or turret, whatever it is that you have, spine crawler, and just use that to kind of clear those shields out as they spawn. So it will minimize that, but still just something you have to worry about microing. However, his cannons aren't necessarily as strong as some of the other commanders. So Eminent Domain could become a problem if you are using them for defense, because once they take a couple, it tends to snowball. And the combination of self-destruction and some team comps that Amon might have. So for example, we were chatting about if you're fighting like ground Zerg and a bunch of Zerglings come in, can you hold it normally? Sure. But if they're blowing up and damaging your static defenses, all of a sudden that could snowball really quickly. And on top of that, I find with Alarak, his units will typically clump up. So if you're using P3, for example, a lot of your Void Rays will be in one little spot. And all of a sudden, if you have these units kind of coming underneath you and all of a sudden they blow up, or if Alarak himself takes a lot of damage, it hurts quite a bit. So for him, I find that these mutations do impact him quite a bit more than a lot of the other commanders. So I actually have him in D tier personally. Like I do think he struggles quite a bit compared to the others. Like I can see a case to bump him up to C. Definitely, I have him in D.
Okay, what do you think, Joni?
So one of the interesting things about Eminent Domain, and it's as we will no doubt come on to later, it's got a few interesting features. Is the ability to kind of block off using like cheap buildings and effectively create a wall of buildings that then the enemy takes over and then won't go past. So Alarak's a good example of a commander where if you were to like forge block across the front of your base, then you are effectively, when you're defending, safe from having self-destruction getting underneath your units. So I think it gives you a little bit more versatility to utilize like a mass void ray or a rough walker strategy or something like that in a manner which is like a little bit safer. Having said that, yeah, all the points that Pidgeot made are still valid. Destruction wave is really useful for keeping units off your units, i.e. keeping yourself free of self-destruction. But at the same time, like mineral shields is going to have an impact here, particularly if you just lose a bit of time and forget, he's got an expensive army and it is expensive to replace. If still not brilliantly, I had him in C tier.
C tier. Is C okay for you, Pidgeot?
Yeah, I can go with C or D. I think the one thing I would also add on to this mutation in general is the comp you're going to be fighting will make a big difference. Like we can make those walls for those ground comps, but if it's like a fighting Air Zerg or Air Terran or Protoss, it'll just change the dynamic of the match.
I've actually tried that on this map because I remember they changed the way Eminent Domain works so that it's the enemy that has to destroy the building. You can't destroy it yourself. And for Protoss buildings, they don't burn down, so you can't just let them burn down. Mm-hmm. Plus, if you're running Wrathwalkers and Destroyers, they will just shoot the building down after it transfers to the enemy, right?
Yeah, this is true, but it's just, I think, potentially just moving units out of the way. You're basically just blocking off your base.
Anyway, it's not relevant. Both of you agree with C. Let's put Alarak in C. Third prestige, right? All right, let's move on. Arcturus, where do we have him?
So, I mean, ESOs are good on this map. They are good for clearing this map. You're not really having to leave your base much. Bunkers are good, but again, they run into, sort of traditional problems with Eminent Domain. And therefore, it's kind of, it's tough to put Arcturus in S tier for all of the fact that he is very, very strong on this map normally. I would probably say that his Zerg summon is pretty useful for mopping stuff up. If your ESOs aren't hitting stuff outside, you probably still want to defend with bunkers, is the reality, and just make sure that you've got loads and loads of workers on hand to repair them. But it's just not as good as normal. I potentially look to play P3, I think, and I had him from A to B.
A to B. What do you think, Pidgeot?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of those points. And what I'd also add is the risk with his bunkers is if you do lose it to Eminent Domain, again, like using the example of Zerglings rushing in, like Amon will take control of the bunker and the unit, so it can snowball. What I would recommend is with Ming's, his siege tanks aren't the greatest, so I'm not necessarily going to encourage that. But what I would say for using P3, for example, have some units outside in front of the bunkers. Like I know it's a bit of micro, but just put them in front just just so you can have them face tank something.
This
If you're
is
P3,
inhumane.
like have that explosion, which will hopefully be far enough away from your bunkers so that they don't get overtaken. So Eminent Domain is a interesting one for me because it hurts him quite a bit, but he also has the tools to try to avoid it as much as he can. And in this map specifically, he CSOs to clear the whole map quite quick. So as long as you make sure that you're getting this done before like end of night 2, day 3, he'll still do quite well. He's just a little bit riskier, which is why I can never put him in S in this case. But I do agree with A tier. I can even see B tier, but personally I have him in A tier because it's
Okay, both of you have an A tier. Let's put Arcturus in A tier. Prestige-wise, third one.
I personally would like using P3 in this one just to kind of help more on the defensive side, as odd as that sounds, to make sure your bunkers are safe.
Okay, put Arcturus in A tier. So let's move on. Artanis, where do we have him?
Yeah, Artanis, this is definitely not one that he will enjoy. Similarly to Alarak, he doesn't have good defensive structures like with his photon cannons, so he can get overrun with Eminent Domain where it can snowball. He does have his stop towns to help defend him, but depending on the comp and what you get, especially night 1, if it's like Hunterlings, it can escalate quite quickly. And his units in terms of pushing out will have a bit of trouble. Like you can try to build up Tempest, but those are a little are quite a bit expensive. So 1, you could lose them, and 2, it takes a bit of time to build up to it, even if you are able to keep your distance. For all those reasons, I had him with Alarak in D tier, but depending on how we want to split them up here, I would go between D and C. But personally, I have him at D.
What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's not too dissimilar to Alarak, but probably with not quite as good of a toolkit to deal with some of the main threats. You know, this map has you need AoE damage on this map, and he doesn't really have, you know, aside from potentially putting out, you know, Archons with Storm or something like that, he doesn't really have fantastic AoE. So he's going to struggle to a certain extent on defense, pushing potentially slightly easier, but at the same time, yeah, doodling's getting into or underneath, you know, whether it is Tempest, Sword Dragoons or whatever, is still going to cause you pain. So yeah, I think he's pretty comp dependent. I'm sort of very happy to put him in D tier.
All right, both of you agree with D. Let's put Artanis in D. No prestige recommendations because D is considered bad. Let's move on. Dehaka, where do we have him?
So Dehaka, like, pack leaders are good, and I suspect for this map specifically, you possibly want more than one of them out at a time. So potentially, like, maybe P2 is not necessarily the best option here. I'm a big fan of utilizing Impalers for defense. He's got lots of interesting little nuances, like Dehaka's primal hosts and guardians will auto-target mineral shields. So like leaving one loitering near your own mineral line is never a bad thing in terms of sort of helping to mitigate against that. Having said that, like, Dehaka's not the most eco-dependent commander out there anyhow. Creeper hosts are probably your best bet just because they've got, you know, free self-destructive unit. AP3 on this mutation purely because then you've got 2 Dehakas out there as well.
Double slap.
And he himself has got, yeah, exactly, double slap and double fire breath, lots of, you know, decent options for dealing with this. So yeah, I've got Dehaka. I think, you know, he's still not going to be a walk in the park. He's still going to require, you know, hefty amount of micro, etc. I've got him in A tier.
A tier. What do you think, Pidgeot?
Yeah, I think we have a similar mindset, but I just have some small differences there. So the reason why I would personally actually use Primal Contender like P2 over P3, maybe this is just my lack of wanting to do a lot of micro, is because of the all the units like it's just exploding on you. It's you're gonna want to watch both the units if you're sending them out. If you're keeping them close by together and you're pushing with it, I think that could work too. But where I like with Primal Contender, last time I had played this mutation, is what I ended up doing was I would work up Dehaka and just get a bunch of behind, like whatever I'm using. So I'd have Dehaka or one of the pack leaders out at a time, and I'd use that to push throughout the day because the pack leaders can tank quite well, and I'm just moving them up along with Ravagers, just kind of clearing in the back from relative safety.
Does Dehaka have Ravagers?
or not Ravages. Oh my goodness, I'm just mixing up the names. Not Ravages. Or Ravasaur. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, Rabbitosaurus. So for Rabbitosaurus, sorry. So he does have that to kind of help push quite safely. It's obviously not going to be perfect, but that along with his swarm host to defend lurkers, like he has the defensive tools to stay safe, and he has like good pushing power. So he does have all the tools. I'd just be okay using P2 as well. But I do agree with the ranking where I have him in A to B tier. I was leaning more towards A, so I agree with that.
Okay, Dehaka A tier. Prestige third. I think third or second. They're both fine. Let's move on. Phoenix. Where do we have him?
So with Phoenix, I feel like I'm getting all the same Protoss logic today. So similar.
That's
to
how it works sometimes.
Artanis,
yeah.
Right. So similar with Artanis and Alarak, he doesn't have the good cannons. Like they're definitely like, if I'm thinking of someone like Karax, it's a bit of a different story. But with him, it's just your basic turrets. They don't have too much kind of protecting them from Eminent Domain. And his units, you'll need to kind of keep an eye on with an army comp. If he's jumping in with like a bunch of his melee units, that's going to have issues. If you're spamming carriers, it's just going to become a mineral issue. So he does have the ability to push, but also is comp dependent. When I'm thinking of an example of if you're versing like a ground comp and you have your Colossus in the back clearing, that can definitely help. But if you're versing like a sky comp, he might have some potential issues with that, depending what it is.
He's generally weak
so
against
he-
air, but Dead of Night
Yeah.
doesn't really have strong air presence, so
Yeah, it's just what's Amon's comp. So he has like the tools, but that's where, in this case, Colossus will kind of help quite a bit since it is mostly the ground units. Has a bit of risk. So for me, I did put him in B to C. I was leaning more towards C tier.
Okay, what do you think, Joni?
So, yeah, I think champions are good in the sense that the ones you're going to lose, Caldalis, etc., who are going to charge in, do a load of damage, and then die to self-destruction, they are at least cheap and easy to replace, which is a good thing. Having said that, you are going to lose them like a lot if you just let them sort of crack on. So I think that, the reality to it probably is that looking at playing, I sort of had a question mark over whether you'd want to play P2 for, cheap replaceable champions and keep your shell farm safe, or playing P3 and just rely on a little bit more sort of critical damage. Having said that, P2 does allow you some serious quick clearing, so you're at least potentially going to be able to finish the map pretty quickly. But I don't think Phoenix is going to have a great time here. And actually, I'm not sure. I don't think that that's necessarily a comp dependent thing, because as you've said, the attack waves on this map are really not particularly strong. Actually, they shouldn't be causing you too many dramas by the time they hit hard. But I just think splitting for defense is not brilliant with Phoenix. You have to rely pretty much entirely on quick clearing, I think. So I had him C to D tier.
Okay, I guess both of you converge on C tier anyway, so I guess that's where he lands. All right, Phoenix in C tier. I think we still recommend second Prestige, right?
I think so, yeah. But as you know, I'm not a Phoenix expert, so I'm willing to defer to better knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah, for what I would recommend with Phoenix is P2 and P3 are pretty good. However, what's interesting with this, I'd almost want to experiment with P1, just because you'd have the ability to use him as a call down to deal with those waves, and even if he takes a bunch of damage, you shoot another one out. But between P2 and 3, I almost would want to go P3, just having 10 of each unit, if having a few or 10 supply of each unit, so having the Colossus and the supporting unit that goes with it.
Okay.
But it is a playstyle thing, so all
Let's
works.
move on. Han and Horner, where do we have them?
So Han and Horner double S tier. Your galleons don't die, which makes life pretty easy. On top of that, strike fighters wreck this map. And as an additional bonus, mag mines auto target mineral shields. So they literally for once have everything going in their favor. Easy S tier if not higher.
Okay. What do you think, Pidgeot?
Yeah, 100% agree. I think the only thing I'd say is instead of double S, I'd even say triple S. They're just so good on this map, because on a normal day they can clear with strike fighters throughout the night. They have the mag mines to help defend in those emergency situations. They have, to your point, they have the widow mines to help clear the mineral shields. There's not a single mutation here that hurts them, and of course, Eminent Domain just busts them immensely, because you can just put your galleons literally just slightly even outside the base, and they'll have to keep focusing it for a while. Probably the strongest S of today.
Have you guys considered that things like aberrations and things like hunterlings and stanks can just walk past the galleons and just wreck your mineral line and your airstrikers?
Yeah, but the thing is, you're not depending just on them. So if you're only using those, would make sense. But in her case, she still has a bunch of things to supplement that. So she can build units. It's not like she won't have units. She can use the mag mines as a defense. You can use the strike fighters in an emergency situation to kill those few units. So any of those like threats, I feel like, are easily dealt with.
But when you use
it
your
is something you have to keep
airstrikers,
an eye on.
when you use your airstrikers on defense, they're not on offense,
It will
which will
slow you down.
delay you.
That is true. It is, but I don't think it's going to be to a point where, because if you're finishing it by end of night 2, for example, you're only going to have to deal with what is like 2 in the first night, potentially 3 in the second at most. And at that point, you should have more than enough of an army to deal with it. Not to
Speaking
mention
of army,
when
can you
upgrade your
really get an
galleons.
army when all the aberrations fight your units, which are, by the way, fully susceptible to self-destruction?
I would say so.
They are, but I think like the thing with this map is that because you can float buildings as well, like you literally you can put yourself in a position where you literally can't die.
Okay, provided the enemy is provided the enemy is not air, sure. Anyway, so I guess you both ultimately go with S. Let's put Han and Horn in S. Our first S of the night. Nice. Let's move on. Kerrigan, where do we have him?
So I've got Kerrigan. I mean, Kerrigan's very good at this. She's not particularly reliant on structures. She's a very quick moving commander. That, utilizing a mobilization wave, she can clear absolutely buckets of enemy waves in one sitting. Having said that, I would suggest potentially using P2 on this, and I think a couple of reasons, like the sort of stun effect on it's really useful. Move in on her too quickly, and also she's able to take out like significant volumes of very low health units at the same time. So I think P2 probably is stronger on this. She's got decent defensive options which are not static. Like her lurkers are perfectly decent for this map. They're not gonna. You get a critical mass of them. They're not gonna let enemies close in. I think she's very, very good option for this mutation. I've got her in S2A tier.
What do you think, PJot?
Yeah, I'm actually agreeing with all of that. So I do think in her case, you might play her a little differently than you normally do. You don't necessarily need to depend on like the Nidus worms or anything like that. The lurkers help her defense, clear minerals. You also have your although it's a bit expensive, but if you really want to, you can get your dude lords and just have them support as well from like a distance and be safe too. And I do agree with P2 where Kerrigan's going to be really strong. Go in, kill from range. She has mobility to really deal with everything that'll come up on the map. So she has really everything she needs in my view. So I actually agree and had her in S tier as well.
All right, both of you have her in S tier. Let's put her in S tier.
Yeah.
What prestige? You guys are saying second prestige?
I went
I
Okay.
think so. I think P2 better for dealing with large clumps of small units, which I think is your primary danger, not only on this map but on this mutation as well.
All right.
But I will put the caveat of if you're not comfortable moving around with Kerrigan, because she will be squishier, because you will also be more likely to take damage. P0 I think is just fine too. But I feel like P2, if you're comfortable moving her around and microing her, yeah, I would go with that.
All right, so I guess it's S tier. Have you guys considered first prestige so that your lurkers shoot super fast?
Like lurkers on Malignant Creep are amazing,
right? I was wondering if you considered that.
Basically, we're not using Nidus worms.
Yeah, and you don't need worms on this map, really. Like, I actually think Kerrigan has got a really, really good variety of options this week.
Yep.
All right, so that's that. Let's move on. Nova, where do we have him?
Yeah, another fun one. I feel like we went from 0 S's to what I'm putting as my third S for this week. So for Nova, she's not super mineral dependent. So even if you're not dealing with the mineral shields, you'll still be able to get by. However, you can just put a turret and you'll be just fine, which I do recommend. So you'll be okay there. In regards to her P3 specifically, you can walk around the entire map and clear quite easily. So you just almost avoid the explosion just because they're not going to impact Nova at all. And on the plus side, when she's at home, whether you're using P3 or even if you're using Soldier of Fortune, you can definitely have your Liberators, your Siege tanks, so you don't necessarily need the buildings themselves to defend, which, I mean, her turrets aren't that great anyway, so you're not really going to depend heavily on them. But you'll have a lot of units that can defend at home while having Nova clear the entire day and night cycle. And worst case scenario, you need to bring her home, you definitely can, but she can clear quite quickly. I think you'll have it done before end of night 2 or day 3 if you're just using her outside on the map on her own. For those reasons, I put her in S tier.
What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, agreed. Basically, with the with the core premise, like P3's brilliant for clearing. You add mastery points into the nuke cooldown, you've got even better clearing with her, and then you've got perfectly decent, albeit very expensive units. To hold for the probably the only 2 nights that it is that you're going to be defending. And as mentioned previously, like eBay blocks with Nova are particularly effective if you play a Liberator comp, because you just put the liberation zones outside of the engineering bays, and they won't try and attack them either. So I think you can basically just concentrate on microing Nova and getting the map done as quickly as you can. So I had her in S tier.
All right, so that's a unanimous S tier for Nova. She's very blonde this week. Let's get her in S tier. Let's move on. Raynor, where do we have him?
So Raynor has good defense, but it's bunker reliant, which is a serious problem with Eminent Domain. His pushing is okay as well, but you are again typically going to be relying on either sort of BCs, potentially top bar usage. You're going to want to make usage of that. I think basically his prestiges, some of them are viable, but it's going to be quite dependent on your play style. You probably won't want to use P1 just because self-destruct, if you do get hit, is going to do some serious damage. Slightly difficult one. I am certainly no expert with Raynor, but I saw him sort of not having a terrible time doing anything, but at the same time not having the best of times doing anything. So I had him sort of somewhere between round C tier. Let's go C tier.
What do you think, PJ?
Yeah, actually had him in C tier as well. And it's because Raynor is, again, jack of all trades, master of none. So what's really interesting with him is he does have the bunkers, which typically on this map are phenomenal, but similar to everyone else, if he gets overrun and Eminent Domain kind of snowballs, it becomes a bit of an issue for him. However, what I would do on this map and Prestige specifically is really focus on your siege tanks, really focus on your factory and starport units, as opposed to that. And the reason is you can't lose a siege tank to Eminent Domain, and you can get rid of things, or just defend from a decent enough distance. With the plus side of during the day, you can now go out with those same units and push, and they're not necessarily as close range as your Marines would be that would go into those bunkers. And on top of that, you do have your top downs to kind of help push if you really need that. So given the fact that you're going to have to play him differently, and that I did have him in C tier. I was debating B, but I saw him closer to the ones that we have in C than a tier above. So I do have him in C tier.
All right, so I guess both of you decide C tier. Let's put Raynor in C tier. Prestige wise, no prestige.
So for
probably
this one, I would go P0, potentially P2 if you want the Rough Rider. If you really want to focus on those starport and factory units,
Stim.
but but mostly I'd be going with P0 because P3 just a little bit too expensive in this game, and Blackwater is just don't play Blackwater. So
okay, so let's move on. Stet Boy, where do we have him?
So for Stetmann, so this one was a little interesting because I did want to put him higher at the beginning, but then the more I was thinking about it, the more I realized he had some issues. But if I'm thinking of P1 not having any concerns and getting set up versus Best Buddy, where I just really want to buff up Gary and push quickly, I would kind of debate between those two prestiges. However, when I'm thinking of his capabilities to deal with everything, he has a spine crawlers to deal with mineral lines if he needs them, or his own units to clear it. He also has the range to deal with the self-destruct, so he doesn't necessarily have to be as concerned with all his units. Of course, the Zerglings, if you're going to mineral dump into that, will definitely not do well there. However, if you're using your longer range units, hits, you should be okay, especially kiting with your Steadilite like speed buff or just heals to kind of deal with it. So he does give you a little bit of everything you need. Him between A and B, I was gravitating a bit more towards A, but I'm kind of in between those two. Personally, I have him at A though.
What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, I did not have time, and CTG, you may be able to inform us. I did not have time to see what happens to his Statilites when they are repeatedly hit under Eminent Domain.
I know they can be cancelled. I know they can be like cancelled when they are shot down while they're being destroyed. But once they're up, they're just disabled. You don't lose them.
Yeah, so Eminent Domain doesn't affect them at all. Okay, that's interesting to know. Because I was thinking, I mean, like, obviously P1, they are just invulnerable, so you're not fussed about it. Having said that, the fact that they don't, you know, they're not affected by Eminent Domain does make P2, like, more viable than it would have if they had been taken. So, you know, like, P2 Stetmann is generally very strong. You know, he is going to be affected to a certain extent by self-destruct, but at the same time, his E-Gorbs are also extremely strong, and it gives him that range to deal with them. Lurk is good for defense. You know, if you wanted decent range, like, you know, mass Hydra is always a good shout for him, I reckon. And like generally, I think plays this map like pretty normally. Not without problems. But I don't think it's like too much of an issue. And you've always got the sort of the free unit answer with him of going like mass infestors. I'll have Stetmann in A tier.
Okay, both of you eventually agreed on A tier, so let's put Setboy in A tier. Prestige-wise, second one. Let's move on. Stukov, where do we have him?
So Stukov P3 has issues, self-destruction. Like whilst it is very strong, achieving that critical mass when you're getting, you know, destroyed en masse is highly problematic, and this is one of those ones where I wouldn't necessarily back Stukov P1 to sort of win that fight. Also, defending multiple entrances is extremely irritating with Stukov P3, so I think I'd be more inclined to possibly play P1 with Stukov this week, and looking at sort of siege tanks for defense. Potentially in combination with some sort of infested structure, and then Diamondbacks for some fast clearing. I think, you know, self-destruct on the Diamondbacks, they do kill stuff very, very fast, so closing that gap's going to be, you know, not too much of an issue for them, and they also move themselves very quickly as well, so that slight delay that self-destruction gives you, I think, you know, with a small decent group of Diamondbacks, you can clear quite quickly here. Having said that, you know, not without its issues, I think Stukov is certainly not free this week like he has been in a few of the others. I've got him in B tier.
What do you think, Pijayot?
Yeah, so I know Stukov has kind of been running a little rampant with P3 the past few weeks, so this is nice to see a little bit of a change. To Johnny's point, when you think of P3, he can definitely like try to brute force his way through it, but he's going to be a lot slower this time as a result of self-destruct. And if he does get overrun, like if there's a big wave coming at you, that's where it becomes a bit more of an issue for him, because once he starts getting overrun, it starts to snowball, kind of the opposite of what you want from his P3. I do like his Diamondbacks in this case, which I know isn't typical for like his typical games on this map. But when you think of just the Diamondbacks, they don't really care too much about self-destruct because they can just kite around as long as you're willing to do that. They clear decently, but not super fast. The other alternative I was considering with Stukov is just going P0 and using his bunkers as like a mortified defense as well. Or not, like his infested bunkers.
But if you lose them...
Yeah, but if you lose them, that becomes even scarier. So he does have the tools to do it like most, but he, again, also has a lot more risks going in. But given the amount of risk and just the fact that you're, once it snowballs, it can snowball quite quickly, I'm happy putting him in B tier as well.
Okay, I guess we're going to have a B tier after all. Do not worry, B. Someone is with you, and that someone is Stukov. Let's move on.
My OCD also wanted someone there, so...
Prestige-wise, first one?
I feel like in his case, I feel like in his case he can go quite a few. I think P1's definitely going to be his best, but if you want to go P0 and try to have that defensive wall, I think you can. If you want to try to brute force it with P3, probably not the greatest idea, but could still try. But I would say P1, I agree.
All right, let's move on. Swann, where do we have him?
So with Swann, I coincidentally also had him in B tier, and the reason I did for that, similar to the mindset we had with Karax, where he does have a lot of those defenses, and he actually has a way to kind of maintain them. So the interesting thing is, of course, when you're repairing, your structures cost minerals. He doesn't really have to worry about that. Only time that really has come up is with a mutation like this, where if you're not paying attention to your mineral line, that could become an issue. But in this case, he doesn't even have to worry about that. The extra bonus is that his on top of his defensive structures, he does have his race that can be quite good at kind of just flying around to one, give vision to your laser. You can, since they're fast enough, you can micro them around to deal with a lot of the buildings. And of course, depending which prestige you're playing, your top downs can definitely clear
A
the
lot of
zone.
buildings. Yeah.
Yeah. Now he's not necessarily as good at clearing as Karax, as we were discussing before, but he does kind of have a very similar play style, just I would say on a very like a toned down version. However, his defenses are phenomenal in terms of not only his buildings, he does have his siege tanks, he does even have his science vessels to kind of heal through everything. So he does have everything he needs. And of course, you can always just put some SCVs just idling around some of your defensive structures so that they're just passively healing it. And since free, you're not even going to have to worry about that. So he does have everything he needs, but with a weaker army and pushing power compared to everyone above him, I did see him as a B tier.
B tier. Okay. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, I agree. I think you're probably going to want to play P2 to really buff that static. But then, yeah, agreed totally with Pidgeot. Like, probably looking at Wraiths to clear. They're nice and quick. They're nice and responsive.
That's what she said.
You know, you can get them out of self-destruction nice and easily. But yeah, in general terms, I think he is effectively like Karax, but not quite as free to clear. So I'll have him in B tier as well.
All right. So Swann ends up being in Swann again. Prestige-wise, second one?
Yeah,
I think
P2
so,
as well.
yeah.
All right. Tychus, where do we have him?
So, I mean, Tychus basically has Tychus problems this week rather than like mutator problems.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the special infested on this map can cause him issues. You know, chokers
Yes.
can just like you've got effectively like can stun lock him. Hunterlings can be a nuisance, although not quite as much of a nuisance. But like it does make it slightly sort of RNG dependent in terms of what comps you're rolling or what special infested are popping out first. Other than that, like he does generally play reasonably normally. Sirius's utility is slightly reduced. I believe I'm right in saying, without having had the time to try it, that Sirius's turrets are just as prone to Eminent Domain, if memory serves,
They are.
as any other turret. So you know, it's kind of, you've got a bit of that defensive utility taken away. Having said that, like first few nights in my experience of playing P2 Tychus on this map, Sirius is not losing turrets. You know, they're timing out before they die. So I think with this one, like there is an urgency to clear quickly, because P2 Tychus, as strong as he is, after sort of night 3 and onwards, you know, he does start getting overrun. So you do need to be all over it. Having said that, you know, Tychus is chonky enough that self-destruction's not a massive issue. He's a single hero clear really on this one. And therefore should be perfectly capable of being, you know, microed around and self-destruction not being a massive issue. I've got him in A tier.
Okay. What do you think, Pidgeot?
Yeah, I think I might have a bit of a different view on Tychus. So although Tychus typically is strong, like you said, he does have Tychus problems this week. The one benefit that I would also call out is if he does get grabbed by a choker, just get your early medevacs out, because you can't actually like pick him up from those. But as much as P2 is the typical one I like going for Tychus, even P3, sometimes maybe P1 in this case, you could technically get away with that this week, because if you're going to be taking a lot of that chip damage and can't heal through it or push through it as Tychus, having like a Rattlesnake or even Nakara if you really want it, just to kind of help you push a bit faster, I think might even potentially work this week if you just want to like turn off your brain and just kind of F2A move with like his whole little goon squad. So it is definitely a possibility to play a little bit differently with Tychus. However, when I think of the issues he has, yeah, he can push, but his defense is gonna struggle a little bit more than a lot of the other commanders we have above him. him. So I couldn't really see him above B or C even. Like I personally put him in C. I was kind of debating between B and C, but everything that he brings to the to this one, he'll try to play it normally, but he's gonna get impacted more than everyone above him that we have on the list even right now. So I couldn't like see him with a Swann or a Stukov. That's why, but I could, but I definitely see him like above Alarak and Fenix, for example. So I kind of see him there.
So is it B or C?
I personally would do C, but I'd be okay with B. I'm not sure what you feel.
What do you think, Joni?
I don't think he's C tier. I think he clears like his clearing power is really not massively reduced on this. I think if you do play P2, you're gonna be done by the end of day 3. So I totally see sort of the points, but I just think that like he's strong enough that he can get away with it. I'm happy to put him in B tier, but I don't see him being lower than that.
Okay.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I guess we can converge in B tier. Let's put Tychus in B tier. Prestige wise, second one or
I personally would, yes.
All right.
Yeah, I think there's some flexibility this week, but I think they all work.
Okay, that is Tychus then. Let's move on. Vorazun, where do we have him?
Yeah, so for Vorazun, she was another one that I feel struggled a little bit more this week. Similar to, I think, every other Protoss minus Kerrigan I spoke about this week. She has some issues. However, the one thing that she has going for her is her Dark Pylon, so you can at least try to hide some of your photon cannons. However, if you're ranged, you just need to take a little bit of time to build up, but her pushing power isn't necessarily the strongest at that point. From her prestiges, I am a big fan of P3 in this case, just to try to hard push with those Templars.
That's really
because you're going to need a bigger amount. Yeah, it's really her main one, like for most things. But it's just the only way you're going to try to push through it. And very close to Artanis, so I had her in a D tier personally.
What do you think, Joni?
So I think the best option for Vorazun in defense is basically making forge walls using a Dark Pylon. Because if you're making invisible walls, they're not attacking the enemy, so they're just blocking the entrance to your base. And what that means is they're not going to be aggroing detection. So as a result, if you're able to put your Dark Pylons out of range, which you should be able to, and just take care of a few of the select special infested, like the actually can't even remember what they're called, but the
Chokers,
the big observers,
spooters.
no, the big observers, the spotters. That's
yeah.
No, the spotters. If you take care of the spotters from range before they're able to deactivate Dark Pylons and such, then it puts you in a position where the infested simply can't get in. So I think that her defense can be like pretty passive, basically, but still quite effective. Few issues clearing, bearing in mind that her quickest clearing melee units are melee units. So like, DTs, time stop, all good as per usual, but are going to be pretty affected by self-destruction, etc. So you're going to have to micro pretty carefully, sorry. Obviously the cloaked units, the broodlings are not necessarily going to be aggro to them straight away, which is an advantage, but you are going to be having to move pretty quickly with your micro in order to stop the DTs like auto attacking the broodlings. So yeah, I don't think she's as problematic as like an Artanis and stuff, but I do think you're going to have some technical sort of issues and problems with this one. So I had her in C tier.
C tier. I guess. Is C tier okay for you, PJ?
I guess I'll just ask one question before that. Do you see her above or below Artanis? Because that's the one thing I'm having issues with. Because if because I see her as worse than Artanis, which is why I have her in D. But like I can definitely justify, I can see the reasoning behind C if you're trying to make a wall. It just I find her worse than Artanis transparently, so that's why I have her in D.
Yeah,
but I'm okay
I can put it this way. I can totally see why. I think she is simply less likely in the majority of instances to attract aggro in the first place because she has a lot of cloaked units, which I think on this map do help quite a lot. So I have her above Artanis.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that then. I'm okay with both.
So C?
Yeah, I'm okay with C.
Okay. So have you guys tried playing the cloak wall strategy against Terran?
No. I probably have at some point, but not that I can remember. I'm guessing
That's
Ghosts.
kind of what I was thinking where it hurts.
Yeah. Auto turrets in your mineral line in night 1.
Yeah.
Very fun.
Yeah.
All right. C tier it is. Let's move on. Zagara, where do we have him?
Oh, this one hurts.
Yeah. Like, so Zagara's not got like brilliant answers to anything this week, I don't think. We'll chuck in the obligatory mention of bile launchers, big option. Well, I say not a bad option. They are her best option in terms of putting some static down, and they can be useful, particularly for like softening up the big waves of infested and stuff that are coming in. Having said that, whilst they're useful for thinning out, you are going to need more than that. And she doesn't have a lot of answers. Like, you are almost certainly better off playing P3. Like, a P1 army is just going to get absolutely annihilated by self-destruction. So you're probably best off having the hero unit on the field and at least providing some support. With hydras, with roaches, etc. Potentially this week looking at playing like some sort of aberration comp, just because then you've got slightly like tougher, albeit still melee units. But yeah, I don't think Zagara's got great options this week. I had her from D to E.
D to E. What do you think, Bijayot?
Yeah, it hurts because I really do like Zagara, but I actually have her in E tier as well. And the reason is I think compared to every other commander this week, she's just doesn't have an answer to really anything. Her static defense, again, the bio launchers, as cool as they look, they're just like I've used bio launchers on this map before. I even tried spamming bio launchers on this map before, and even on a normal basis, unless you put things typically to tank for it, they're just gonna walk right through. But with Eminent Domain, that kind of becomes a bit of an issue. So bio launchers, just as a defense, aren't that great. Spine crawlers, even if you're using them to supplement, just aren't the greatest thing. Whether using P1, which I wouldn't recommend, or P3, which is probably the better option, you're gonna run out of steam. Like, usually what you want to do with Zagara on this map is kind of build up that big army, clear as much as you can in like day 1, or sorry, day 2. But it's like you're not gonna get too much. You're not gonna get as much ground covered as you normally would, because again, just the explosions are just gonna wipe out your army. So it's quite hard for Zagara to push, quite hard for her to defend. So unfortunately, I think just the mutations hurt her more than anyone else this week. And as much as I hate it, I did put her in E as well.
Okay, Zagara goes down to E. The good news is
And
she's
one other
not an
thing
F.
I'll add, sorry.
The bad news for...
the one last thing I'd add is...
Yeah,
go ahead. Oh, yeah, the one other thing I was going to add to her is that even her hero character, like with like P3, even though that's typically strong, it's like the things you send out are just going to give you the same problem with her Hydralis, her roaches. Even when you do the call down, it's like, yeah, they're strong abilities, but they suffer the same way as like her just base units. So it's you're really just depending on Zagara herself and even like the Banelings just to try to like bunker bust a few things, but it's just nothing else helps her there.
Yeah. The bad news for Cage is that he now has competition for Zagara's love. You two are battling it out to claim Zagara's hand.
She does have one advantage, to be fair, on this mutation, which is that bile launchers are useful against mineral shields.
Yes.
I mean, like, look, we're clutching at straws here.
Gotta give her something.
All right, let's move on. Zeratul, where do we have him?
So for Zeratul, is it so for him, what I had is so what's really cool with Zeratul is, although he has the cannons and they don't necessarily get as much like support as like again Kirax, so similar to other Protoss, he does have some static defense. You just have to be careful defending them, especially if you're phasing them out. They're not going to be able to defend themselves, so just something to keep in mind. Even if you decide to go with your monolith turrets, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend in this case. But what's good with Zeratul is he can go out and clear himself. And of course, for anyone who's familiar with Zeratul on this map, you get a bunch of his Dark Templar, and you'll be able to clear quite quickly. However, in this case, you have to be careful because a lot of his a lot of the units will like struggle because they are melee units to push. So you do have to just pay a bit more or a lot more attention when you are pushing with Zeratul, and he should be able to push fast enough to clear quite quickly. Where his concern is going to be is, again, because you're pushing a little slower, it might take a little longer than normal, which just means that you're gonna be you're gonna have a little bit more trouble defending at night. So what you can do, of course, during the day, if you are focusing on the defense, is get like that watcher, like the observer, go out, use your cannons to kind of clear. But it is gonna be a bit more of a struggle than I was kind of between A and B, but I did land on B tier for Zeratul because he still plays similar to normal, but he is just slowed down by this.
So B tier?
I had him in B tier, yeah.
What do you think, Joni?
This is between me. Yeah.
Yeah, this mutation is kind of canon's good, but not as good as normal. And the advantage you do have is that although the shade projections can still be sort of taken under Eminent Domain, is that you can cancel them back at the original canon, and then it blinks out. So you sort of at least do have that advantage. His army is still strong. You know, his his disruptors obviously excuse me, his disruptors obviously take care very, very efficiently of small low health units, so that's a bonus as well. He himself clears the map pretty efficiently, but you know, exactly as Pidgeot said, he's just not quite as good as normal on this one, and is just gonna have to be like a little bit more careful than normal, basically. So yeah, I had him A to B tier.
Okay, so both of you have in B tier. Let's put Zeratul in B tier. Do we have a double S this week?
We have a triple S. Although I think CTG just doesn't maybe not like that, but personally I have Han and Horner as like the double/triple S, just because when a mutation literally busts you, it's not only are you dealing with it, it's you just got made a heck of a lot stronger, and the fact that she can normally clear this map quite quickly, I personally have her quite high, so I would say double S for her, or even triple S if you want to.
Yeah, they're a broken Terran commander on this
Literally.
map. Like, I think you literally have to try to fail the game.
Yeah.
All right, let's put Han and Horner in double S tier. Ta-da! With the power of movie magic, we now have a double S tier, Han and Horner. So, who is top of S tier?
I personally would have Nova, just because of the simplicity of her approach in this, whereas Kerrigan, you still need a bit of work.
So, yeah, very simple. So, who's top of A tier?
I'd probably Carax, to be honest.
All right.
He sold us on it.
I'm reversing my position. He's very strong.
I'm okay with Kerrigan.
Okay, who's second in A tier?
I think.
I was going to go with Stetmann.
All right, and then?
Yeah, I'd probably go Stetmann, Dehaka, Abathur, Manx.
I
All
can
right.
agree with that. Yeah.
Top of B?
Yeah, I'm going to say Tychus. I think Tychus is extremely strong on this map. But even with Tychus problems, yeah, I think probably maybe Tychus, Zeratul, Swann, Stukov possibly would be how I would play it. But that's probably
very
some
similar.
commander bias for me in there as well.
Very similar
Yeah,
indeed.
only one
Identical even.
Yeah.
So who's top of C?
I would
I think
say
I think Vorazun is underrated on this, but
Then
yeah, I would have gone with I could see Vorazun just given the points he had made, but I was gonna go with Fenix and then Alarak and then Raynor at the bottom of that.
I was actually going to put Raynor at the top of C because he had repair, but you do you.
yeah.
It's C anyway, who cares?
Yeah, I was going to say, you've
C for
made your bet
challenge.
if
C
you're playing
for
a C tier
challenge.
commander.
Yeah.
D for...
Don't play it.
And E for everyone loves me.
E for avoid at all costs.
avoid at all costs, sure. S for stinky. Hey, Nova is blonder than Kerrigan this week. Just very slightly blonder. Alright, there we go. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. If you have an idea for it to ask you, please leave it in a comment. I will see you guys next time.